my name is Garret, founder of Influent. As director of marketing for an Amazon agency, I took the company from 20 people to over 100 people in just 2.5 years by blowing up the founder on LinkedIn. I took a unique approach to not only create ICP content, but really get in front of other thought leaders who had a similar audience to arbitrage their networks. This not only allowed us to drive over 8 figures of pipeline in just a few years, it also allowed us to attract an acquisition partner and eventually exit the company to a large global agency. We did this strategy with less than 5 people and technology that we scrapped together ourselves. I've now taken that same playbook and turned it into an agency that we're now running on over 30 executives across different B2B. Any B2B company, SaaS or agency that wants to quickly scale can leverage LinkedIn in this way to generate a ton of pipeline and build their authority on the platform.
If that resonates with you, listen along. Also, check out our other episodes. You're listening to TLDR, the B2B SaaS growth podcast brought to you by Spear Growth. The goal of the podcast is to enable you, our listeners, to generate an additional $100,000 in cumulative pipeline by May 2024. To do this, we bring people who have made a real impact in their companies. They cut through the fluff and dive deep into one tactic or strategy of theirs. I'm your host Ishan. Let's generate pipeline. Hey Garret, thank you so much for doing this. I know we've been talking a little bit, but LinkedIn, this episode is specifically like something that I was looking forward to because I've been on LinkedIn for 9 years. My LinkedIn 9-year anniversary was like 4 days ago before recording this episode. And I haven't made nearly as much progress as I would have liked to. So we've already seen a lot of success, but just taking it to the next level, I think this episode is something I'm looking forward to. So thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. So looking forward to this one, man.
Of course, man. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast. LinkedIn is a crazy world to work in. It is a social media platform, which means it's kind of a black box to most people. So, don't feel bad that it's taken you a while. For a lot of founders, it's a really difficult nut to crack. And, excited to talk through kind of some of the strategies and tactics we've implemented.
Love that. Okay, for anyone who doesn't already know you or follows you, can you just quickly introduce yourself in short?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Garret. I'm the founder of Influent. Influent is a full service, full funnel LinkedIn agency, meaning every aspect of the LinkedIn platform we touch in order to be able to, basically help drive revenue for our clients. We work across, B2B SaaS, B2B agency, really any sort of B2B, both startup and mid-market company that wants to leverage the LinkedIn platform for growth. We are growing extremely quickly. We have about 12 full-time folks, and we are, looking to about triple that next year based on, some of the demand we're seeing. And I think we're doing cutting-edge stuff that, frankly, I haven't seen anyone else in the space doing. And in my opinion, we're leading the space in terms of integrating some of the different mechanisms one has available to them on the LinkedIn platform.
Love that. Absolutely love that, Garret. So let's get into the topic. You mentioned you've been using other influencers. So before we get there, could you maybe divide the entire, let's call it the project into, or the tactic into pieces? Like, hey, this is the bare minimum that you should do, and then this is what, where does everything fit in? Because yes, the tactic probably fits into a larger strategy. Could you, in really short, just describe the whole strategy? What is how important? And once you've done that, then let's dive into the strategy where you've used other influencers.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the very bare minimum, LinkedIn is a place where you should basically be generating ongoing conversations with your prospects in a way that builds up a community over time. So what I'm really describing here is different than any other marketing channel. We're not talking about white papers, we're not talking about webinars, or these sort of disparate different content marketing activations. What we're talking is about community building within your ICP, and in a way that sort of puts you at the top of that community as an authority. Now, that is a long-term content marketing strategy that can be full funnel, meaning you can use it to generate awareness, you can use it to sort of nurture and generate consideration, and then you can use it to, fish in that pond you're creating to actually create conversion. So at the very base level, that is what LinkedIn can do for really any B2B company. It's really though about producing great content, figuring out how to use the mechanisms of connections, messaging, paid ads. There's all these different levers one can use, and so the bare minimum is basically figuring out how are we going to use these levers in order to generate that community. Now, there's a lot more I want to talk about, of course, which is like how do you actually tactically go about that? And there's some really creative ways of utilizing, different thought leaders other than just going straight at your ICP. But happy to kind of dive in as you want to, as you
Oh
want
yeah, yeah.
to.
Let's actually let's keep the lever of using other leaders for the end because I really
Yeah,
want to dive
sure,
into it. But can you just walk us through everything else and
sure.
just tag them as, hey, this you really have to do this, and hey,
Yeah,
you don't really need to do it, but it's good to have. Like just tag that out and just say, hey, these are
absolutely.
the other pieces. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for every person, let me rephrase that. For every company that wants to leverage LinkedIn in any way, could be ads, could be thought leadership. In this case, we'll focus on thought leadership. You have to build your upstream marketing plan first. Meaning if you go at LinkedIn, LinkedIn is this sandbox where you get to rapidly iterate and test different go-to-market sort of messaging, right? You are putting content out there in real time in front of your ICP and then getting back feedback on whether or not that resonates. So if you want to, fiddle around with LinkedIn tactics all day long, be my guest. But if you haven't done the work up front to figure out who is my ICP, what the hell do they care about, what are they doing on LinkedIn, what kind of content are they engaging with, who are they following, what are their pain points at the different stages of their awareness, what are the different unique aspects of us and what we can provide them in terms of points of view, insight, value. If you haven't done all that work and mapped that out, you don't have a plan. You're just sort of spewing what you assume is valuable content into a vacuum, a void, I should say, and hoping it brings something in return. So that is a non-negotiable. I always tell people, take all of the leaders in your company, lock them in a room together, and don't let them out until you've built a map that says this is our unique value, and this is the audience we're serving, and this is how those things connect. Hopefully that makes
Love
sense.
that.
And everyone
Yeah, yeah,
out
of
there, this
course.
is
Yeah,
a
love
very
that.
complicated process, but you need to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Love that. Okay, so great. We have uh, two pieces here, right? So one, like, hey, what message resonates with your audience, and the second piece is who really is your audience and what do they care
Yes.
about. So we have those two things. What else is like the second lever or so?
100%. So, that itself could, that's a growth question. That could be, you could spend months answering that, and realistically you should revisit those questions over and over as you get more data. But assuming you've got that plan built, some of the next levers you need to look at are one, content. So, what content are we producing? What are the posts going to look like, sound like? How do we make sure that they are authentic? Who are the thought leaders who are going to be posting that content? How regularly? What formats? So there's the content mechanism. Then there is the connection mechanism. So actually, going out and connecting and seeding your audience with the right people, making sure that you're hand selecting the folks that you do want to be engaging with your content. Then there's the messaging lever. How are you utilizing one-to-one messaging on the platform so that you can take conversations, and I really mean that, conversations, off of the content itself and actually into a one-to-one setting. Then there is, ads, and how are you leveraging paid ads to amplify in sort of a hyper-targeted and, iterative way, your thought leadership so that you can generate not just really great organic results, but actually get some paid results in there as well and move people down the funnel. So those are your levers: connections, messaging, ads, and content. Now, there are other aspects of the platform that maybe fall into some weird areas. How do you utilize live video? Well, that's content, but there's other ways of utilizing that. How do you utilize LinkedIn in combination with live events? There's so many ways to sort of cut up LinkedIn, but I would say the ones I just shared are the main levers there.
Love that. And utilizing other influencers, does it come under content,
Yeah.
connection, messaging, or all three? Or
This is this strange new frontier where I would say it's maybe its own bucket, but really it utilizes aspects of each of these buckets because LinkedIn is a platform that's really, it's network based. It's a big networking kind of landscape. It's not like TikTok where you post content and there's an interest graph and it puts it in front of the person who wants it and then it works. You really have to be conscious of the fact that there are already these existing groups around certain topics with thought leaders that already exist and have following. And so how do you leverage those people to help you, accelerate your growth? That almost can look like a B2B influencer type strategy, right? Like, how do you create partnerships potentially with these different people to help get your message in front of that audience? It could also look like a more sort of organic, sort of less partnershipy B2B influencer model, and more of like a content strategy where maybe you're connecting with people who engage with their content. There's all sorts of ways to cut that up. But yes, that is sort of the new frontier on LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. Love that. Let's get into so for the utilizing other influencer strategy to work. What's the bare minimum you need to do for content, connection, messaging, ads? Like, what's the bare minimum, and what can we skip?
Here's bare minimum. Every B2B founder, SaaS or agency, should be scraping lists of who's engaging with their competitors or thought leaders' posts, other thought leaders in their space, and they should be at the bare minimum connecting to those people. That is I wouldn't say it's a straightforward workflow to set up, but the tech has caught up to make this something that every B2B founder should be able to get running. The reason this is such a bare minimum is because there are people out there who publicly are showing that they are interested in what you do. And if you're not going out there and connecting those people and bringing them into your audience, it's just a completely wasted and missed opportunity. So that's number one. I would say, yeah.
Digging deeper into this,
Yeah, sure.
on a bare minimum level, what tech are you referring to? Like, how do you set that up specifically? Is there like a tool and like a workflow? What's the cost of this?
Of course. Yeah. So, the first thing to say here is that regardless of tech or tool, you need to have a team, a person. If you're leaving this up to the founder, it's going to be a disaster. That person has way better things to do. So you need a person or an agency or a team. That agency or person or team should be leveraging tools like Linked Helper is a really great one. This is a pretty legitimate tool that allows you to build workflows. There are other tech like Phantom Buster, but I'd really recommend Linked Helper to start. Linked Helper will allow you to basically, pull. I got to be sensitive about what I share. But LinkedIn, look into tools like Linked Helper. They allow you to pull together lists in ways that will be generally beneficial for your strategy. I will say one more thing here, which is just be very cautious. There's a lot of sort of black hat tactics and weird tools out there that can really do more damage than good. So definitely vet the tools you use. Make sure that you're being aware of LinkedIn's user agreement, and don't do anything that's going to put your account at risk, because that kind of screws up the whole operation.
Got it. And then is there a number of connections limit, something that you should be sending on a bare minimum level?
Yeah, so LinkedIn allows any account to send 100 connection requests per week. Now, I would recommend, if you're going to do this, to do it safely. You need to spread those connections out, not do it all in one day, because even if you're doing it as a human, LinkedIn sees that activity and can flag you and think you're a bot. So spread those out over the week. Do it. I would also recommend getting Sales Navigator and doing those connections through Sales Navigator, because if you are a paying customer of LinkedIn, and if LinkedIn understands that salespeople are going to be utilizing this feature in this way, and is going to be, thinking that you're less of, again, like a bot if you're utilizing that platform. Now, there's something called an SSI score, which most people don't know about, but it's basically a score that LinkedIn gives you based on how much you're using their different, their platform in different ways. The higher SSI score, we've seen, certain clients get access to additional connections per week. We have some clients who can send up to 150 without any blockers. So go ahead and start with that first 100, but as you start posting and commenting and utilizing other aspects of the platform, you should be able to see that number rise up to 120, 150, and so on.
Oh, I did not know it can unlock more connection requests. That's just not what I was expecting. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely it's one of those things though where it does take time. We have clients that, it had been a year before they ever got more than 100.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Okay, perfect. So we have connection requests. That's the bare minimum you're recommending. Let's get to the content. What's like the bare minimum content on the you can do on the content side?
Yeah, I would say no less than 3 posts per week. 4 to 5 is preferred, but if you're gonna put effort into this, at least put 3 out there. This is social media, and you need to make sure you're staying top of mind. That people are seeing, even if they're not engaging with the post, that they're seeing you in their feed. Because again, you're building this sort of affinity with an audience, with a community. And if you're dropping off the face of the earth, 1 week is a long time in the world of social media. So yeah, to answer your question straight up, 3 posts a week. If you're going to do less than that, reconsider whether or not you're ready for this, because at the end of the day, you're going to be, it's going to be tough sledding trying to build a community with one
Yeah.
post a week.
And what about like the posts have to be at least X good? So like is and the question could be absolutely horrible. So is there a better way to think about it? Or
I would think about it this way. If your post doesn't have a chance of getting a thoughtful comment from your ICP on it, you shouldn't post it. There's a certain bar that you need to meet in terms of value add. And if you don't meet that bar, you can actually do more damage, to your own personal brand, because you could start to basically be known as the person who puts out static. And that can actually work in reverse, where now you're making it harder for yourself to create a community. So yeah, I mean, it has to meet a certain bar. People need to remember that, like, in order for someone who doesn't know you to engage with your LinkedIn post, the bar is extraordinarily high, right? Like, most people still don't use LinkedIn to like go find new thought leaders. They're really looking to sort of engage with the existing community they've got. And all they've got is that little 2-sentence real estate there in the hook. And that's all they have to know whether or not they should engage with this new person. So you really have to meet that bar. Otherwise, you're going to be spinning your wheels. Now you can overdo it. You can absolutely spend too much time on a single post. But yeah, there's definitely a minimum amount of effort you need to put in.
love that. And again, for the influencer strategy to work, is there a bare minimum on messaging or no?
It really depends. Messaging is one of those levers where almost any one of our clients has some type of messaging strategy, but the way you use it is just very different depending on your goals. If you're very lead gen focused, you may want to be using messaging a ton to basically take any conversation. Anyone who's liking your post or commenting on your post who's within your ICP may deserve to get some type of personalized one-to-one message, especially if you're in an industry with a super high LTV. Now, if you sell a SaaS tool for $5 a month or $20 a month, it may not make sense for you to send personalized one-to-one messages to every single ICP member that engages with your post. But shoot, if you sell, something that, is $3,000 and above per month in terms of, value, yeah, you should be sending personalized one-to-one messaging. So, there are other ways of utilizing messaging in terms of, sending resources, inviting people to events, inviting them off of LinkedIn onto a community somewhere else like Discord or Slack. Without having to go into depth there, I would say that, at the very least, you should be exploring the different possibilities. And if you're not utilizing messaging, you should have a pretty good reason, because there's lots of different options in the way you could use it.
Okay, so do something. It doesn't matter what exactly it is, but messaging is not something you can just skip.
Here's this. Think about it like this. You should come up with a messaging strategy, and you should think low volume, high volume. Either it's a low volume strategy where you're expecting a low amount of people you're going to message, and therefore it needs to be more personalized, and typically that's going to be lead gen focused. There's a smaller number of people, personalized messages focused on generating leads. Or it's a high volume where we're really not focused on generating leads, we're focused on distributing content. It's going to be a higher volume of people, and we're going to send them some type of resource, an ebook, a guide, a video, whatever it is. Those are 2 easy ways that you can think about your campaign.
I absolutely love that. Okay, so coming to ads, is there a bare minimum you must be doing this, or?
Ads is one of those levers where I would not recommend doing ads unless you have a solid foundation in terms of content. People need to remember LinkedIn ads are some of the most the value of that audience is some of the best. It's one of the best targeted audience available to advertisers today. Like, genuinely, like the targeting you can do, and based on seniority, you're literally selecting the exact decision makers that you want to show your ad. And if you're selling a service that has, a big buying committee, and like, it's so perfect. But in exchange for that value of audience, it's costly. It's a pay to play game. That's what ads are, but it's not going to be like, this small investment. So if you are going to make the investment in ads, and I think it can work for, a lot of different companies, I would say 80% of people using LinkedIn probably have some type of LinkedIn ad thing they can do. If you're going to do it, make sure you have all the other pieces in place. Your content is looking good. Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is you're going to expose people to these ads. And if you don't have any of the content ecosystem to support it, you're driving, it's like driving Google ads to the world's worst website. Yeah. Like you're just burning money. And on LinkedIn, you can burn money quicker than almost any other platform. So yeah, we can go into ads, but the reality is, for most founders that I talk to, especially on startups, they have some work to do before they open the ads sort of playbook.
Got it. So you don't really need to run ads to utilize the influencer lever.
You don't need to run ads to get your first 7 figures out of LinkedIn. Absolutely not.
Love that.
I also know people who've never run ads and have generated 8 figures of pipeline through LinkedIn. It's not a requirement. Now, I guess one more thing here to say on this though, if you are a SaaS company and you are funded and you sell a product that is less than $50 a month, generating enough demos out of LinkedIn organic, it's going to take a long time. Unless you're an Adam Robinson build in public kind of guy or person, it really is going to be difficult to gain that level of sort of volume to justify the cost of your LinkedIn organic. Those are situations where sometimes I go, okay, we just got to dump gasoline on this from day one. Otherwise, you're going to be, a year in and kind of questioning the channel. So there are instances where day one it needs to be done, but vast majority of companies it doesn't.
What about commenting? That's usually a large pillar in every other person. Based on every other person, that's a LinkedIn specialist. That's
guru. Yeah. All the LinkedIn sort of ghostwriter people talk all the time about comments, and for good reason. I just did a post about this actually. Comments are one of the most valuable signals that someone within your ICP can send you. Downloading a white paper tells you what they're interested in that topic. It doesn't tell you whether they actually got value from the topic. It also doesn't tell you, it's an action. There's no, the difference between a white paper download and a LinkedIn comment. A white paper download is an action. A comment is an interaction. It is a public conversation. Someone took your ideas, internalized them, thought about them, spit back out something that they believe in a public forum where you have an opportunity to create a dialogue. That's like meeting somebody.
I love that so much. I'm going to steal that.
It's like meeting somebody it's the difference between meeting somebody at a conference and being able to shake their hand and have a 10-minute conversation about a topic versus somebody picking up your pamphlet. It's a completely different realm of quality. And so this is why comments matter. Now, there are 2 ways to think about comments. And both are things that need to be happening day one. First, commenting on your own posts. When you get somebody commenting on your post, there needs to be a urgency to go stoke a dialogue. It's basically the equivalent of someone showing up at your trade show booth and saying something, and you could either walk up to that person and respond to them and go have a conversation, or you could let them say it and then walk away. It's like, holy crap, they're right there, go talk to them. So that's very important. And as far as like how you do that and like how you build conversations, there's an art there we can talk about. And then secondly, there's comments outside on other people's posts. Now, these are a really underrated way to generate a following, because your perspectives that you would share in your own content can be packaged in little, sort of pieces that can be distributed on other thought leaders. And this is getting into the other thought leaders strategy, on other thought leaders' posts, because in their comment section, treat it like a forum that your competitor is hosting, where there's people who are interested in your product too, talking about the subject, and you can insert yourself into that conversation and end up bringing people into your community. And it is such an underrated way of building an audience. One other thing to consider here is that your comments also show up on people's feeds. If you scroll through your LinkedIn feed, it's not just organic native posts. It's also, hey, Bill commented on X, or hey, Jill commented on Y, and it'll show you their comment and the post. So it's an additional touch point with your existing community. So all this being said, I know I'm kind of being frantic here. The point is, comments are extremely important, and you do have to have a system to make sure these are getting done. It doesn't all have to be driven by the founder. You can absolutely empower that founder with, there's certain ways of doing that don't involve AI. Please, God, don't use AI for comments. But yeah, anyway, very important.
Got it. Okay, love that. So before we get into the thought leadership, stuff. So yes, you need
Yeah.
to have an overall marketing strategy, understand your audience, understand the what they like and who they are, and what can you say to them, what's about your company that's unique to you. Second is post at least thrice a week, and it has to be comment worthy. Is that yeah, or like there's a value bar you set where, hey, someone might or should at least be able to comment on it. The third, so content three times a week. Second is connections. Send the 100 connections a week, every single week. Use tools like LinkedIn Helper to do it. The third pillar is messaging. You have to do it as well. There has to be a bare minimum, like do something, but don't do nothing in messaging. And the fourth one is, and we discussed, you shared a couple of different ways to do it. And then the fourth thing is replying on if anyone comments in your post, and also, sorry, commenting. So one is like replying to comments, and the second is even going out and commenting, and we'll probably discuss commenting better in the actual strategy. So if and only if someone does all four of these things, should they even consider the influence strategy? Is that a fair statement to say?
It's fair to say, but let me give one caveat. LinkedIn can be a hard switch to flip, meaning all of those things are difficult to do. And it's a big barrier to get people to really do them all. Sometimes it takes people going out there and posting, once a week and doing nothing else for like a month. And then all of a sudden they see some a little bit of traction, and then they get excited. So there is an emotional element to this. This is a new tactic. A lot of people don't, they feel weird about doing it. So if what you're doing is going to lead you to the place where you're going to flip all these switches, go for it. But if what you're doing is sort of in an effort to prove out the channel, you're not proving anything, because you're only doing, a fraction of what you actually need to be doing.
Got it. So if someone isn't doing these four things, they should probably not even consider the influence strategy. Is that still just clarifying? Like, is that an accurate statement? Not.
If you are not doing these things, you will not see ROI on LinkedIn.
Got
If
it.
you're in the business of doing things that will generate ROI, good, go ahead. But you will not see ROI.
Perfect. Yeah. Let's get into the influencer strategy. What the topic for today was. So yeah, I think I'll just leave it to you. Like, how should we think about it? And let's go very, very specific, much more than everything else that we spoke about for LinkedIn.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the story that I brought up there in the beginning is really where I got my start in LinkedIn. I was working for an Amazon agency, an agency that launches and helps brands launch products and scale their businesses on Amazon. At the time that I got hired to lead marketing, we didn't have a whole lot in place in terms of marketing, but we did have this founder, his name's John, that was super just bright and knew a lot about the future of Amazon. So to me, it was like, this is like 2018 at the time, LinkedIn's this nascent platform. It was like, this guy, if I turn him into an influencer, an Amazon influencer here on LinkedIn, I think that, it's a blue ocean. I think we can go dominate. So that's what I did. Followed him around, ghost wrote for him, a bunch of content. In that first year, we generated over $1 million of new business just through LinkedIn. Wow. And it was like, that's not pipeline, that's new closed business. And it was all inbound. And it was just from posting. At that time, it was so rudimentary. It was just like posting videos here and there. There was really no strategy. It was just throw stuff up there. And so you can imagine that after that first year, it was like, let's see what we can really do here. So we built a team underneath me and basically, created this engine where we could not only do this for John, but other thought leaders at the agency. And within, 2 years, we had scaled the agency from 20 people to, near 100 people. And LinkedIn was our number one, pipeline generator. Now, the way we did this, how we actually built this into what I think is one of the most sophisticated and world-class strategies that was running at the time, was that we focused on other thought leaders. Now, this is sort of a weird concept that maybe will break some people's brains, but a lot of people think about LinkedIn like like TikTok or like any other social media platform, where it's like an interest graph. You post something, you think this is perfect for my ICP. LinkedIn will make sure my ICP sees it, and if it tanks, if it does bad, that must be because it's my ICP doesn't care about it. Well, that's not necessarily true. LinkedIn wasn't built. I mean, think about it. This is like a recruiting and like job platform. It wasn't built to be like that. It was built so that people could build professional networks, their peers, people around them. And so this algorithm, while it has a lot of updates and LinkedIn is for sure improving it, it's still network based, which means that when we would post content for John, sometimes it would be super valuable. And if someone saw it I mean, it would elicit like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. But we would really struggle to get impressions. And it was because his network was only, built a certain way. And so even though we started running this, connection strategy to try to seed his network with our ICP, we started thinking to ourselves, geez, if we could just go out there and arbitrage the existing networks that are already out there, because at the time there were other people building their own, sort of saw what we were doing with John and started building their own little networks. It's like, well, that would be extraordinarily useful. We could build this at scale. And so what we started doing is we started looking at the thought leadership landscape and saying, how can we create content that either tags that person or potentially, get into their comment section or whatever the heck it is. And so the way we approached this is a couple different things, a couple different strategies. First is that we tried to co-create content. So we intentionally did, a live LinkedIn video series where we would, invite other thought leaders from the space, some who were adjacent, meaning not competitive, but sort of adjacent, and others that were a little bit competitive. And we would have these sort of, podcast sessions live on LinkedIn. Now, these things were much less about, the long-term sort of like, can we turn this into a big podcast that gets big on Spotify? And it was way more about, can we make sure that that person's audience sees our thought leader? Because what we saw is after these sessions, we'd see huge spikes in ICP followers. And it's because we had gotten in front of this other thought leader's audience. So that was a really great tactic. By the way, am I cool here? Are we good? Can I keep going in 2 and 3?
Yeah. With that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Don't want to overload here, but another tactic we did, commenting on other thought leaders' posts. This is what I mentioned before. Anytime there was a perspective shared by another thought leader who had the audience we want, we would go through and try to figure out what is our perspective relative to this other thought leader's perspective. It wasn't to be antagonistic, but instead to sort of spark a conversation and inject a point of view that we felt like matched our ethos. That was extraordinarily helpful because now we were starting to get their following, engaging on our posts, engaging on our comments rather. And we again would see huge spikes in ICP followers, which was awesome. The third and sort of really coolest and maybe most underrated way of doing this is going out there and finding thought leaders who you can actually incentivize to be part of what I would think like a B2B influencer type program, right? Where you can go find people who have audiences and activate those people to, help basically point back to you. A lot of times this is really easy if you can create some type of asset that's going to be valuable to their audience. So think of like a survey or some data or a really great report, something that thought leader can pick up and say, hey, check out this report John just did about X, Y, and Z. Super valuable, super interesting. Here's my POV on it. Well, now it's like an organic way for that person to have picked up John's content and point back to John. And if we incentivize that person the right way, we can create, again, these huge spikes of ICP followers. So it's a kind of a cool strategy and kind of a workaround, but it has to start with this understanding of a network, not just, you post and you get the followers.
I love that. I think everything just sounds very simple and obvious. Honestly, like once you say it, then,
once it's said out loud.
but then I think the best strategies are like that. It reminds me of we did this episode on partnerships. It's still one of my favorite episodes ever, and everything he said was just so obvious. But it's just still the episode I probably share the most with anyone ever building a partnership program. I think it was by Cody Snyder. I always send that episode over to people. I think it's very similar to that.
100%. There is sort of an elegant quality to these things that it's not this unattainable secret. This is the problem, is that a lot of, I don't mean to be overly cynical about it, but there's a lot of, I was going to say charlatans or grifters, a lot of people out there who are, these independent LinkedIn solopreneurs who want to peddle this idea that there are secrets, like the secrets to the LinkedIn platform. And that's or hacks. There's a very appealing idea that there's this secret or hack that you can get and they have it, and if you get it from them, you'll be successful. And this is happening in the world of social media all over. People who want to be influencers buying guides to how to become an influencer overnight. The reality is that the reason most people don't do this is because it is hard to do, not because it's complicated, because it's hard to do, meaning you have to have smart people who are doing, a lot of them who are doing this at scale for a long time. It takes a long time. And then lastly, you have to buy in a way that you're willing to accept that you're not going to be able to bear the fruit of the trees you're planting in month 3. Like you're going to see green shoots out of the ground, but it's not going to bear apples and oranges. Like you really do have to, consider the fact that you have to do long sustained effort for sometimes years. And frankly, most founders and marketers don't have that kind of patience. It's not, building a community is not a turn it on and it happens. It's a long-term play. And just like all long-term plays, it's not in the strategy, it's in the sort of the determination and grit.
I know we're on time. Can we extend for 5 more minutes? I have a
Sure.
couple of follow-ups. Okay,
Absolutely.
perfect. So let's say we have this list of influencers, right?
Yeah.
And anyone's listening in, one, how do I build this list? If it's in a Google Sheet, what are some columns of that Google Sheet? If you can just help me imagine that, and then what are the activities I'm doing to that? Is that how you run it, like operationally?
The connections?
The influencers, right? So let's say
The
if there are
influencers,
some
understood.
influencers, probably have a list of influencers somewhere, right? Like, what does that look like
Yes.
operationally?
Here's where it starts. It starts with research. So you create a Google Sheet is perfectly fine, where you're basically spending time building out a list of, here are all the people in our space who are producing content that is generating followers that we want. Here are their follower counts. Here's how often they post. Here's, just like create that sort of database. And then typically I'll try to categorize these by they have our primary audience. Maybe these people have our secondary audience, or so on. Just help yourself kind of break them down into maybe categories. The next step is to actually go through and how do I put this? Go collect data on who is engaging with those people's content. It's public. You can go get it. I won't say specifically how, but you can go get it. And once you started creating, hey, here are the 5,000 people who are regularly engaged with Chris, and then here are the 5,000 people that are regularly engaged with, Jill. You can start to do this really cool thing where you can kind of match and say, oh, Brian is following Chris, Jill, Craig, and Lauren. And you can start to go, oh, interesting. This individual person is highly engaged. That person's actually worth way more of my attention than anyone else, because this might be somebody who I could bring into my community and eventually become a client of mine. And so you can start to build out this sort of aggregate list of followers and people, and build a little bit of a kind of a map of who's following who. And then once you've done that, you can then start to prioritize how you want to activate these different influencers, maybe you want to do outreach to some of their followers and share some, advice, feedback, assets, whatever.
Love that. Okay, so let's get into the commenting bit. Let's say you want to comment on these influencers' profiles.
Yep.
But then you're not as available as a founder.
Yes.
Now, what does that workflow even look like?
Yes. So there are, I would say, two really important things to consider here. One, comments need to be valuable, meaning it has to be additive. You can't be just hey, cool post, stupid, don't do that. And then they need to be personalized, meaning they need to be written in a way that sounds like a person. If it sounds like it's sort of copy and pasted, or it sounds like it's in AI, it's you're going to be hurting yourself more than you're getting where you need to go. So what I'd recommend here is, when you build that thought leadership map there in the beginning, you should be building out sort of a set of points of view, things that are your soapboxes. We stand behind this, we believe this, we believe that. And those things should map to different sort of pain points, things that are being talked about. One of those for me, for instance, is that organic social has long been slept on because it's been hard to measure. And that hard to measure things are historically under leveraged, and therefore that's where your biggest opportunities are going to be. Anyway, that's a POV. Now, what you can do is you can start building out a map of here are my 28 POVs. And then what you can do is you can look for posts that you could connect back to one of these POVs. I can find a post from Chris Walker where he talks about the dark funnel, and I can have someone from my team identify that post, say this one relates back to Garrett's point of view on X, and then we can have that person bring that point of view out into the comment and do it in a way that's written by a human. It's, interesting post, Chris, not sure I agree with this because, and then you can bring in that sort of POV. But what you end up with is all of these different, your POVs kind of sprinkled around in these different comments. And then of course, you have to keep conversations going, and that can be, sometimes you do have to get the founder involved, but you can absolutely supercharge this by using the founder's ideas to seed comments.
I have a lot of questions, but I'll just ask one more.
Sure.
Why only founders? Since the start of the episode till now, you've been referring only to founders. Why not like multiple people in the team or?
Yes, good question. Most teams do not have the appetite for doing this across a bench of people because it multiplies the effort, which means that maybe this is a better way to say this. I usually say founders because founders are the ones who are most willing to test and learn. And if it's on themselves, I think they feel more comfortable with the investment. If I felt comfortable that most decision makers, founders, CEOs, VPs of marketing would be willing to roll out a bench of subject matter experts who are going to be these different avatars, we'd be talking about that. But the reality is that 98% of people that I talk to that are interested in this, they think of it as a test, and they're only willing to test on one profile, and who's that profile going to be? It's going to be the CEO or the founder.
Love that. Okay,
hopefully,
perfect.
we have this podcast 2 years from now, and we can come in here and we can talk about this more broadly about utilizing a bench of executives, because that's the better way to do it, in my opinion.
I love that. Thank you so much. Is there anything, I know we are like way past time, but is there anything that I should have asked, I missed asking, would add a lot of value to this conversation?
I would say this, one more thing. It is very, very easy to start this and to end up getting really caught up in signals, trying to understand stuff, really trying to is it working? Is it not? Is it working? Is it not? Anyone who tries this needs to go in with the understanding that it's going to be a while before you have clear and obvious signals about what's working and what's not. Because the reality is that this is small scale network building, and I've seen so many founders who have a genuine interest in this burn themselves out with it and convince themselves that it's not working because they post something, it doesn't do well, they overthink it, they try something different, that doesn't do well, they overthink it, a month goes by, they've burned tons of hours, and they're like, LinkedIn doesn't work. It's like, slow down. Let's get this thing rolling. It's a long-term thing. Give it a chance, and then let's read the signals at very set aside moments every quarter where we can look at the data, and let's not overanalyze every post. That's my biggest piece of advice there. But that's it, man. I think this has been so fun, and I hope people get a lot of value from it.
I loved the conversation we had at the end because it was so different. It was so special. Is there anywhere you post more of the specific that, hey, make a lot of POVs and then map it with like that piece was maybe one of my favorite points of the entire episode. Do you post about that somewhere? Do you write about it somewhere? Where can people follow you?
I appreciate you getting excited about it. I get excited too. Yes. Post this to my LinkedIn profile. That's where you can find it. I'm also, on podcasts. You can find me talking about it there. But we do live events on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the place. So go follow me on LinkedIn. It's Garret, last name Caudle. Find me there. You'll find all this content there. That's where we're building our community. So,
love that. Thank you so much for doing this, Garret. This is maybe something that you'll see me doing a lot more of.
Yeah,
after this
wonderful.
episode.
Love that.
This is going to be amazing. Yeah.
Well, when we check in a year's time, I expect to see some new followers on your page.
Oh yeah, I expect to see a lot more revenue. So
love it.
In a year.
Love it.
Okay, love that. Thanks so much, Garret. This is
awesome.
amazing.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the TLDR podcast. In case you're wondering, Spear Growth is a marketing agency. We help B2B SaaS companies like yourself with ads and SEO. Check out our website at speargrowth.com. That is SPEARGROWTH.com. Just like this, every episode starts with a 1-minute summary of what we discuss. Pick the next episode to listen to based on what you can implement right away. And after you implement any of these tactics and see an impact, we'd appreciate you drop us a note on podcast@speargrowth.com.